The shadows of faith. When religion becomes a weapon. In the rural villages of Kenya, where the weight of economic hardship presses down on shoulders already bent from labor, these promises fall like rain upon parched soil. It begins with a promise, a simple promise of salvation, of belonging, of purpose. Man would rather will nothingness than not will at all. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote these words over a century ago, yet they capture perfectly what I witnessed in the followers of Paul Mackenzie's Good News International Church. People who had surrendered their agency, their critical thought, their very humanity, not because they desired destruction, but because the alternative was a life without meaning. Consider the story of Akinyi, a former schoolteacher who abandoned her profession, her family, and eventually nearly her life at the command of a man who promised her divine purpose. When I asked her why, her answer echoed Nietzsche's insight. Having a terrible purpose was better than having no purpose at all. The landscape of Kenya is dotted with these theaters of psychological manipulation. They aren't merely churches or religious movements. They are sophisticated systems of control that operate with a profound understanding of human psychology. Religion is the opium of the people, said Karl Marx. But what happens when that opium is deliberately laced with poison? What happens when the comfort of faith becomes the chains of subjugation? In the community once controlled by Ezekiel Odero's New Life Church, I met Jabari, a former engineer who surrendered his life savings, his property, and nearly his sanity to a man who claimed divine authority. The religions of mankind must be classified as the mass delusions of humanity, wrote Sigmund Freud in The Future of an Illusion. Yet Freud would have recognized that these delusions weren't merely spontaneous psychological phenomena, they were engineered. The techniques are as sophisticated as they are devastating. I witnessed former members of these groups describe the systematic dismantling of their identity, their progressive isolation from family and friends, their gradual surrender of critical thought. Carl Jung understood this process when he wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." The cult leaders of Kenya offer exactly this, an escape from the terrifying responsibility of self-determination, the crushing weight of free will. The story of the Legio Maria movement is particularly revealing. Founded by Silvano Okello in the 1960s, this movement didn't just offer a religious alternative, it offered a complete psychological reconstruction of reality. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, wrote Nietzsche. In Kenya, I witnessed the aftermath of those who lost this struggle. The psychological mechanisms are devastatingly effective. First comes the targeting of vulnerability, economic, emotional, existential. Then the systematic destruction of existing psychological structures. Finally, the reconstruction of identity around the cult leader. As Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These cult leaders understand this truth intimately. They become the interpreters of the unconscious, the arbiters of fate. In a small village outside Nairobi, I met with the families of those who had died following the commands of David Owuor. Their stories reveal the dark intersection between religious manipulation and psychological vulnerability. Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is, wrote Albert Camus. In these cult environments, members are encouraged to reject their humanity, their doubt, their critical thought, to become something both more and less than human. The consequences are devastating, not just financial ruin, though that is common, not just familial destruction, though that is nearly universal. The ultimate consequence is the surrender of human agency itself. The mass man does not believe in anything, but he has only automatic reactions and lacks any individual destiny, wrote Jung. This is the final goal of these religious manipulators, to create humans who react but do not think, who follow but do not question, who exist but do not truly live. What makes these psychological operations particularly effective in Kenya is the intersection of post-colonial trauma, economic vulnerability, and rapid social transformation. Civilization and its discontents, as Freud titled his work, creates the perfect breeding ground for those who would exploit the human need for meaning. As Nietzsche recognized, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Yet these cult leaders have become precisely what they claim to fight against: agents of control, exploitation, and psychological domination. There is hope, however. In the same communities devastated by these cults, I met individuals who found the courage to reclaim their psychological sovereignty. As Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." The survivors I spoke with found this space, this moment of choice, this reclamation of human dignity. Their resistance echoes Nietzsche's call. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. From the chaos of their exploitation, they have indeed given birth to something luminous, a renewed commitment to critical thought, to genuine human connection, to authentic spiritual exploration. The story of religious manipulation in Kenya is not unique to this nation. It is a story of universal human vulnerability and the exploitation of our deepest needs for meaning, connection, and transcendence. As we confront these realities, let us remember Jung's wisdom. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Understanding the psychological mechanisms of religious manipulation is not about condemning faith. It is about protecting the sacred human capacity for genuine spiritual experience from those who would weaponize it for power and control. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like this type of content.